Now let's begin with the next session. This session's called Kal Chakra. To introduce the panel, first of all, let me call upon stage someone who ranks amongst India's highest-selling authors of English fiction. He was included by Forbes India in their Celebrity 100 and is a winner of the Crossword Popular Choice Award. Ladies and gentlemen, with a big round of applause, let's welcome Mr. Ashwin Sanghi. And, well, I don't think we were loud enough. Bigger round of applause then. And joining him on stage, we have, from a very, very, very successful actress to being one of the most popular faces on television, she has had her experiences as a mother in award-winning book, The Modern Gurukul, My Experiments with Parenting, and she's penned that down and she's going to share all those experiences with you. Ladies and gentlemen, the very, very, very beautiful Sonali Bendre. Over to you, sir. Thank you so much.
Check, check.
Hello? Can
Check.
you hear me now? Yeah? Oh, superb.
Hello. Yeah, perfect.
Yeah. Good evening, everybody, and it's wonderful to be here. It's so exciting to be here. We've all been hearing about Times LitFest going on, and it's their 7th year. But the best part about it, I would say, is that the entry is free. And I love free things. But more than that, it's lovely that it encourages people to just come, and it's lovely to see that how many people actually love books. And books for me has always been my wonderful private world. As a child, I grew up, my father was in the government services, so every 2 years we were in a different city, new places. So my best friends have always been books. And in the process, one is always looking for new books, new topics, new things to read about. I remember the first time I heard of this wonderful author, Ashwin Sanghi, sitting here, was Chanakya's Chant. Was the first book that I read. And it was amazing. You know, I don't know, I hope I don't offend you when I say this, but you know, there's something, you
Sonali,
read
you
Dan
know, there's
Brown's...
nothing that you can do that can possibly offend the average male.
Thank you, Ashwin. But you know, I mean, you read Dan Brown's books and everything, and for me, this was like a very much an Indian, I would not like to say it, just for the reference sake, such an Indian version of Dan Brown. There was this amazing take that was, that he had taken, be it Krishna Ki, be it Rosable Line. Amazing. So, got hooked onto his books from the Chanakya's Chant onwards, and since then I have been a fan. And so it's really amazing to be sitting here, and when he said that, could you launch the cover of my book? I said, but why are we not launching the book so that I can take it back with me and read it? And then he's been giving these little tidbits where he just tells these 2 lines about it, and he's not really sharing what it is about, and it's driving me nuts because I can't, you know, the suspense is killing me, and I'm like, what is it? Why can't you just come out with the book? But anyway, today we will satisfy ourselves with just launching the book cover. But we will still try to get a few things out of him about what is this book about? What has inspired you to write it?
First of all, thanks, Sonali. I'm honored that you are a reader and a fan. I'm really, truly, it warms my heart.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for the entire audience which is here today on account of this momentous book. I must tell you, as far as this particular title is concerned, Sonali, the intention was to try and explore. There are First of all, let's start with Kal Chakra.
You know, Keepers of Kal Chakra brings, to my mind this whole mystic organization and some super secret organization. And
of course.
So can you imagine the intrigue that is already building up within me? That what is this organization? What are you leading up to?
Absolutely.
What part of history are you going to demolish now? Because, there are times when I feel, was the history I read right, or is he rewriting it, or is this the truth? So, because I don't know, the research that you do is so amazing that you actually start thinking that is so close to truth. Maybe this was the truth. I mean, we would like to believe it because it becomes so exciting in his book.
No, I think for me, the idea was that, first of all, let's start with Kal Chakra itself. What does Kal Chakra mean? Kal, time. Chakra, wheel. So it's the wheel of time.
Correct.
And actually, Kal Chakra is a concept, a meditation concept that was taught by the Buddha to a great king whose name was Suchandra. And Suchandra was actually the king of a mystical land which we now know as Shambhala. And what was Suchandra after? He was after he wanted the ability to be able to attain the status of a bodhisattva without becoming a monk. So in other words, Buddha taught him a method where he could become a bodhisattva without becoming celibate, without giving up the worldly life. And so that is what Kal Chakra is. In that sense, this book is a quest to attain that heavenly and pure land called Shambhala. So I think if Hemal is around, Hemal probably, if we were to show everyone the AV,
that would be lovely.
Do you have it queued, or
can we see the AV?
So, yeah. Okay, so maybe okay, lovely. So, can we have some volume? This is probably this.
But thank you for telling us that, because we would want to.
At an earlier session, I was asked that what is the one quality that an author needs to have? And I said there is a Hindi word which describes it. It's called Besharam. And so if you are Besharam, then you'll plug in your book wherever you can. So I'm sorry, but I'm doing a little bit of my marketing.
We will also plug it in. And I'm sure the audience here is here because they are your fans. And I'm sure they're all...
And yours.
And it's about the book, and I'm sure they're all very excited and waiting for this book. So, Ashwin, what I want to know is that how do you come up with these concepts? What are these? Are these whirling around in your head? Have they all been in your head at some point of time? What is it? Where do they come out from?
I would love to answer that in the form of the name of a single malt, but the truth is that it's beyond the booze. I mean, frankly, I'm one of those, I take interest in a lot of things. Okay. Typically, in the old days, people used to maintain journals. Mm-hmm. I have a modern take on that.
Which is?
Which is that I, from the very beginning, have had an email account which no one else knows the ID of, because I use that email only to email myself. Oh. So I email myself almost every day. And so, for example, you and I could be having a conversation right now, and you might end up saying something that strikes me as very interesting.
And that would go into the email?
And that would go into that email. As of today, I've emailed myself about 12,000 times.
Wow.
So anytime when I'm looking at a new book...
Can we get a peek into those at some point? A non-fiction, not a bad idea too. I would love to peek into it.
Then I would run out of story ideas. That's like a treasure trove. But so I go back to that. Okay. And I think, okay, now what's there which is in this, which is so interesting? So to give you an example, with this book, I was thinking to myself, I said, if you really look at the idea of Kal Chakra, it's actually being one with the universe.
Right.
How do you actually blend yourself? How do you merge yourself into this very complicated web of interconnections? And I thought to myself, well, isn't that what quantum physics is attempting to do?
Absolutely.
So I wanted to bring out that notion that a lot of
So
what...
it started with the idea, your email
Yes.
gave you a thought, but after that, one has read your books, and I'm sure my audience will agree with this, that, there's a lot of research that has to have gone into it for the details that is there. It's definitely not just the idea and then, a little bit of single malt doing the rest of the job. It's definitely not that. There's a lot of hard work. One can see it because the research is amazing. So what happens then? Once you've got onto the idea, do you get onto the research bit?
So for me, in the, all these books, starting with the Rosabal line and working my way through till the Kal Chakra, all of these books, typically they follow a rather set timeline.
Okay.
Normally, depending on the book, it could be anywhere between 8 months to 1 year worth of research.
Okay.
Which means that, for example, I don't know the first thing about the Kal Chakra. I would actually have to get into that.
Absolutely.
And similarly, when it came down to the Krishna key, it was sort of once again revisiting the Mahabharata.
Absolutely.
Or reading the Arthashastra for Chanakya's
That's what I'm
chant.
saying. Just 8 months or a year is not really a lot of time.
Oh, trust me, when you're going through it, it seems like a lot. So once I have that process completed, then I have the stirrings of an idea.
Okay.
And that's the time when I start plotting. So my plotting works, believe it or not, on
After
Excel.
your research.
Yeah. And it works on Excel spreadsheets. So typically, for example, let's take, for example, the Sialkot saga.
Okay.
The Sialkot saga is a story about two boys post 1947 after the partition and how their lives pan out over the next 70 odd years.
Okay.
What people don't know, and one day I'm going to share this, is
that
that
today?
if you were to look at an Excel sheet, the first column would indicate the year, 1947, 48, 49, 50.
Whoa.
Then against each of those, the two characters, Arvind and Arbaz in this case, those characters, what were their ages in those years? What would they have been doing? Would they have been in school? Were they setting up a business? Were they in jail? Were they experiencing their first romance? What were they doing? Then I would superimpose on that what was happening in India at that time, politically, culturally, historically. And once I have that, then that gives me the final column that what happens in that chapter.
This is really a unique way. I have never heard anyone write
So
like this.
it's
Amazing.
It's a lot of sweat, actually.
It
People
is.
talk about inspiration. Inspiration is nonsense. It's perspiration.
I agree.
1%
and inspiration.
Yeah, of course. And once you've done that, then frankly, the writing is almost effortless. I like to think of it almost, since this is a topic close to your heart, children's books.
Yeah.
It's almost like a children's coloring book.
Oh, you're
The
just filling
outlines,
in-
you're filling
yeah.
in the red, you're filling in the green. So that last 8-9 months is effortless because you've
by then
already
you've
done
lived
that.
with the characters for so long, you know everything about them.
Exactly.
And so a lot of times when you're making this Excel sheet, do you think a lot of your plot points and everything come out from there because of the
Oh,
time?
yeah, absolutely. In fact, by the time that I'm done with the spreadsheet, I know every twist and turn in that story. And I know when it happens.
How much in love do you fall with your characters?
I think the only book in which I think I did things differently, and as a result of which I had less of a connect with my characters, was the Rosabal line. The Rosabal line was a book which, first of all, it was my first book. And it was a book where I had no clue of what I was doing. So with the Rosabal line, there are people who say that this was the most brilliant book Ashwin wrote. And then there are those who say, nonsense, he was on drugs. Now, so it's exceptionally different views on that book. And the truth is that I had tied myself up into knots while writing it, because it was a matter of chance. I happened to be in Kashmir In Kashmir, there is a tomb in the center of Srinagar. It's called Roza Bal, which is the tomb of the Prophet.
Correct.
There's a 14th century saint buried there. Nasiruddin is his name. Under his body lies a second body, which goes back to 124 AD, which is the origin of the tomb.
How did you find that out? It just...
Well, you see, there are references to firmans. There are court orders which date back to 768, which refer to the fact that the tomb has stood there since 124. So you can pretty much take a calculated guess that the tomb has been there from that time.
Yeah.
And outside the tomb, of course, is a pair of feet on a metallic plate, which has cross marks of a crucifixion. So very often there are people who say, we authors need to go out looking for stories, but the truth is that we don't go looking for stories. Usually the stories are looking for us. So the story finds you, and then either it clicks, and when it clicks, then you say, I need to explore this further.
So just for our benefit, when you saw that tomb there, and what was it that went on in your mind at that point of time when you said...
So I was like, wow, what sort of a story is this?
Yeah.
And I was obsessed with that story for the next 1 year. I ended up reading tons and tons of books, not just on the tomb, but on alternative theories that had been propounded by various non-fiction authors.
Absolutely.
For example, someone had written... A Russian explorer called Nicholas Notovich had visited the monastery in Hemis, in Ladakh.
I think you've mentioned it in the book.
Yes, it's there. And he found a scroll which talked about Isa, a boy who came from Palestine at the age of 13. Now that fits in beautifully with the so-called lost years of Jesus Christ. So all of that, I wanted to connect the dots. And so I was utterly obsessed with that story. My wife was fed up with me. She said that, listen, the only conversation, if at all we have a conversation, it's about that tomb.
Yeah.
And it's really getting on my nerves. So she said, you have to find a way to get that kira out of your system.
So write it fast so that it's out of your system.
So I wrote
did it get out of your system after you wrote it?
But even at that time, 40 pages was a research document where I connected all the dots. And after I was done, I was very proud of myself. I gave it to her and I said, read it. So at night, she read it. Next morning, I said, so what did you think? She said, congratulations. So I was damn pleased with myself. I said, wow, So I said, you really liked it.
Yeah.
So she says, well, congratulations because you've discovered the cure for insomnia. Because within about, like a few pages, I was out for the count.
Are you serious?
So she said, no one's going to read this. You have to make this into a
What
story.
does she have to say now?
I think, frankly, when it comes down to my wife, I'll tell you, I always say that she's the needle. Because at any given point of time, given my figure, when I start floating...
Punctures the balloon?
She punctures the balloon. So, and it's always good to be able to sort of have your feet firmly on the ground.
We all do that to a certain extent. It's a good thing to do sometimes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So did the character get out of your system after you wrote the book, or are you still attached to it? Which is your favorite book? Which is your favorite character?
My favorite book, I would say, is the Rosabal line. But character-wise...
The first baby syndrome?
Absolutely. It's first love.
Yeah.
You never forget your first love. So that book is my first love. But at the end of the day, I would say in terms of characters, I would say the ones I created in the Sialkot saga were probably the best ones.
Okay.
Where I could actually feel that, I empathized, I sympathized with them. So, and of course, Chanakya's chant, Ganga Sagar Mishra, was again one of my favorites. So
you fall in love with all your characters. You love that they're your babies. You're giving birth to them.
Pretty much.
So that whole process. So yes, I get what your wife is feeling. And I know why she is the needle then, because imagine what she's going through. It's a year and a half of this obsession and with every book.
While these books are going on in parallel. There are other books coming along the way. So my James Patterson books happen in between all of this.
Okay.
My 13 Steps books happen in between all of this. So at any given point of time, I'm multitasking.
So do you have a routine where you say that, okay, these are the hours that I'm going to write? Are you disciplined like that, or are you?
Well, pretty much, because otherwise you can't really turn out. I mean, it's been 10 years and I've written 10 books.
It's amazing.
You know, but I like to joke that most people have a 9 to 5 job. I have a 5 to 9 job, which means I'm up at 5. And typically I'm done with my writing by 8:30 or 9.
In the morning? Or?
In the morning.
Yeah, I would thank God.
And my parents are sitting in the front row, Sonali, right here. So typically I have to time myself because by 9 o'clock is when I go and have a cup of tea with them.
Okay.
So between
and do you discuss it with them? Are they their sounding boards?
No. Because then my morning ritual will be totally finished once and for all. So it's easier just to keep it as, because while I'm writing, at that point of time, there are conflicting thoughts coming in and I don't even know as to how that book is going to turn out.
And what is it that you're going to keep eventually? Because how much rewriting happens with you?
Sorry, I didn't get that.
How much of rewriting happens with you?
I've always maintained that I'm not a writer, but a rewriter.
But most writers that I have met say that.
So I'm a rewriter because this book has been through 7 rewrites.
Really?
7 rewrites. And either my editor had some inputs in it or my publisher wanted certain things done.
Okay, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
How is your relationship with your editor?
Oh, I must tell you, my equation with my editor is super. And, she's one of those people who has been with me from the first book, The Rosabal Line.
Okay.
And, in fact, she came on board on account of the fact that she used to be with my publisher.
Oh.
And even after she left my publisher, she continues to edit my books. Okay. So the first edit is always done by her.
Okay.
And somehow or the other, what happens is the process of editing is such that over a period of time, you build up a familiarity.
Absolutely.
And in fact, nowadays when she does edits, I don't even realize that it's her voice. It's almost like she's taken on my voice.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So initially, any fights, any arguments?
Oh yeah, initially the biggest fights were on the Rosabal Line. Because the Rosabal Line was a book which was so utterly confusing to the average reader. Luckily, the ones who were utterly confused didn't want to admit that they were utterly confused. So they said, oh, what a wonderful book. So as a result of which, the book worked.
I don't agree with that, but anyway.
But, so the maximum number of fights and arguments were related to that.
And then since then you ironed out the differences. And the voice became one, and so it's been a great relationship since then, I would say.
And plus she's understood, she is Kolkata based.
Okay.
And
so the distance helps.
And one is distance, but the other part of it also, I must tell you, is that my own inspiration to a very great extent started with Kolkata. And I must tell you this, for the audience which is here, I must tell them this little incident.
Please.
That I was at an event, and in the afternoon, I had a little time to kill, so I went with the driver to look at a temple.
Okay.
I walked into the temple, and I realized that the deity that was being worshipped was actually Amitabh Bachchan. There was a throne along with a portrait of Amitabh ji. So
I did not know this. Are you serious?
I was wondering whether this was real, but once I saw the pujari and I saw people, actually praying, I realized this was real. So I walked outside and there was a little boy selling puja ka saman, agarbattis and what have you. And from him, I picked up a little prayer book known as the Amitabh Chalisa. Now, at that moment, I must tell you, I thought to myself that supposing you were to be knocked down right now and you die and you take birth 1,000 years later, by which time this whole cult of Amitabh worship has caught on. And now there isn't one temple, but 100,000 temples. And someone taps me on the shoulder and says, do you think it was possible that Amitabh could have been a real man? Now, that's the question which fascinates all of us, right?
Absolutely.
That could Ram have been there?
Real, yeah.
Did he walk the earth?
Absolutely.
Was Krishna around? Was he a historical character? Or is everything made up?
Absolutely.
That's where the delicious conspiracy theory comes in. That what if?
What if, yeah.
And that's what drives me. And I think my editor understands
So
that.
what did it lead to, this Amitabh Bachchan temple?
So in fact, it led to that Krishna key.
Krishna key, I thought.
Which was basically the notion that that what in case in the present day you had actually a 10th incarnation of Vishnu. What
Tell
would
me,
it be?
do you really believe, what is your thought on it? Do you think it was just mythology, or did these people actually walk the earth? Be it
You know,
Ram,
I
be
think
it
it was
Krishna.
Lewis who said that a myth is a lie that contains a truth.
Nice.
And that's pretty much what it is. That there's a kernel of truth in that myth. So you dig deep enough and you will find that kernel of truth. But if you think that the entire thing is an absolute truth, then I don't agree.
I agree.
So to give you an example, my take on the Mahabharata, you had a work which was 25,000 verses called the Jaya. It became 50,000 verses by the time it became Bharat. And it became 100,000 verses by the time it was the Mahabharata.
Right.
You mean to tell me that all the various rishis and sages didn't add their own fiction to it?
That's human nature.
That's
We all
human
add
nature.
a bit to it.
Similarly, you take the Ramayana. You have 300 versions of the Ramayana. And each of those versions gives you a very different truth. So, for example, the Tulsi Ramayana treats Ram as God. Valmiki Ramayana treats him as a man.
Yeah.
You take, for example, the Adbhut Ramayana and the Anand Ramayana. These two in particular from the south. One of them has Sita becoming Durga and killing Ravan. And the other one has Ravan performing the rituals for Ram before battle. So there are 300 versions. Which one will you say is the truth?
The
That's
truth
the
is
great
that
thing.
He existed, maybe.
That's the great thing about our mythology, that there is your truth, my truth, everyone's truth
So what
can
is
exist.
the truth of Kal Chakra?
You have to wait.
Can't you just give us a hint
Okay,
at least?
let
I
me
mean, I
give
think
you
we
a-
all deserve it. Don't you agree? We deserve it.
I would say that the notion, to my mind, is that there are many things in Vedant which our seers, which our rishis, which our munis were looking into. The only difference was that they didn't have laboratories and they had no way of experimenting. But they had a much better developed intuitive sense. So either it's experimentation and practical knowledge or it's intuitive knowledge.
Okay.
And both are leading us in the same direction.
Direction.
And that is pretty much the core
Of
of
Kal Chakra.
Keepers of the Kal Chakra.
Okay.
I can see someone has come to stand here and tell us something. So
Yeah. Could we, I'm sure the audience wants to ask you
Exactly.
some
Sure,
questions. Could we have some
sure.
questions?
Check. Okay, we can take only 3 questions. So
Did I take too long? Sorry.
No,
I
ma'am,
took up the
you
time.
were
I was so
perfect.
excited to have a conversation
you
with
were
him.
perfect, but we also have media interactions, so we
But
can just.
let's not cap it at 2, please. It's not fair to the audience, at least 4. Yeah?
Super. You say it. We do it. 4 then. Sir, can we get the mic here, please?
Do you want to use mine?
Whoever has the mic has the floor. Unless there's no mic.
There is one. There is one.
There is?
Excellent renderation.
Thank you.
Ashwin, once again, grateful.
Thank you.
Putting into mythos and Kal Chakra. You are referring to Chinese and Buddhist, while Shiva Sutra talks about Shiva as Kal.
Absolutely.
And Bhrigu Rishi has written whole Bhrigu Sahita on time-based planetary predictions and actions.
Absolutely.
Based on your karmic credits and deposits.
Of course.
So your thought, why this we are transferring, like Om, we say, Dhyana becomes Chana or Chen in China.
Yes.
Then goes to Japan, it becomes Zen. And we feel proud, oh, Zen meditation. Oh, Dhyan, Chan, Ching.
Yes.
But it is Dhyan, it's from here.
Absolutely.
And there are histories saying that Ashoka has gone there, Buddha has gone there. And why do we discredit our rishis' creations to these gentlemen? No disregard to anybody. We respect Chinese also, but
not at all.
Thanks.
But I must tell you, to my mind, talking about Kal Chakra and Tibetan Buddhism is not in any way a discredit to our own. In fact, once you read the book, which I'm assuming that at some point of time when it's out you will realize that I'm talking about the fact that what we now call Tibetan Buddhism and what we now call Tantric Buddhism actually comes from Shiv Tantra. So a lot of those concepts, take for example this cover, you can see the background. It's a mandala. It's a very clear mandala. Where does that mandala come from? It comes from the Sri Yantra, which is very much there as a part of Yantra, Mantra, Tantra. So the aim is not to in any way put down or discredit what we have, but to show what has been the mingling. That is really the effort.
Thank you so much. The next question there.
Good evening, Ashwin. I wanted to ask you about the book cover.
Yes.
What is that unique-looking creature that is?
First time well, as I mentioned, the entire what is called Vajrayan Buddhism or Tibetan Buddhism or Tantric Buddhism actually comes from Shiv Tantra. The initial inspiration was Tantric, Shiv Tantric practice. And of course, in that you have Shiv and you have Shakti. Shiva, Shakti, because Shiva is not complete without Shakti. Shakti is not complete without Shiva. And so in the similar vein, in Buddhism, you have the concept of Kal Chakra and Vishwamata. They are two independent deities, but when they come together, then the world is balanced. I think it was some great author who once said that it's only when evil exists that we know good. And it's only when good exists that we know evil. And so you can't understand darkness without light. You can't understand heat without cold. You can't understand positive without negative. So it is that combination of Shiv Shakti which is very clearly depicted here.
Well, before we go on, sir, that should be a very quick question. I'm really sorry, sir, but we have media interactions also.
Okay.
So one
Hello,
quick
Ashwin.
question.
Okay.
Hi.
As you told, at any given point of time, you write 8 to 10 books at a time.
No. Over 10 years, 10 books.
Yes. But you are working on 10 books at a time, right?
Yeah, it's taken me a decade to get there. Yeah.
Yes. So how does it affect your personal or family life? Do you think about it or no? Or thinking all the time books?
No, I think it makes a huge difference because if your family life is such that your family around you is not supportive, then it can be a huge problem. And I've heard this from many of my co-writers where, and after all, when you're part of a family, there are bound to be issues which come up. I think the key factor is that if everyone around you is in tune with what you are doing. So in so many years, I have never had an issue with my wife saying, you don't spend enough time with me. Or my son saying, in fact, she's quite happy that I don't. Similarly, for example, I was born and brought up in a Marwadi Banya family. So in that sense, the two most important words in my vocabulary were debit and credit. And suddenly, one fine day, after all the investments that my dad, who is sitting here pleased as punch, After all the investments that he poured into me, one day I said कि मैं तो लेखक बन जाऊंगा. And I think he had nightmarish visions in front of him कि ये खादी कुर्ता पहन के झोली लेके निकल जाएगा अभी. So I think somewhere along the way, it's very important to have supportive family members. Because without that, even your inspiration will not happen. Even when you are inspired, you will not have the discipline because your mind will be running somewhere else. So you need to make that work. Yeah?
And with that, now the people from the media fraternity, if there are any questions, we could take that now. And also we have 15 minutes. I'm sorry, 12.
Okay. So we can take a couple of questions from media, and then if we have time, we can go back to...
Superb. If the
Lovely.
media people do not have questions, then we can go to the audience again.
Go to the audience.
Superb.
Absolutely. Yeah?
Hi. 10 books, 10 years. Any fear of a burnout ever?
You guys want me to shut up? Just tell me, yeah? Hello? Wait. Hello? Hello? Yeah, lovely. Sorry. No, I think every author has that fear. There is no author, there is no writer. But you know, I think if you don't think of... I can't remember who it was who told me that the answer is never to take yourself too seriously. So if you can just treat this as an ongoing sort of thing, so even when I'm writing books, I never think of them as writing books. I think that I'm sitting with a bunch of 10 of you and I'm telling you a story. And that story is what eventually finds its way on paper. At that point of time, I'm not worried in my mind whether it will sell a single copy or not. I'm not bothered. But once I'm done with the writing, once the editing is done, the proofreading is done, the book goes into print, that's the time that I sit with my publisher and my marketing guys and everyone in order to figure out, okay, now how do we make this story sell? So I think for me, that formula has worked. And frankly, if I want, I have enough ideas for stories for the next 1,000 odd years. So I will need to take multiple rebirths. And given my karmic situation, that is likely to happen with me. So I'm going to be back here like a bad penny often enough.
And thank you so much for that question. The members of media are here. If you have any questions. Yes.
And I don't, you know, media only wants pics. So can we, huh? They want? Okay.
There, who's the person over there who wants to ask a question? You promised me it'll be a quick one? Go ahead. Can we get him a microphone there, please?
What is your question? Oh, he doesn't have a question.
Okay. Sure. Sure. What's happening now? I'm sorry, guys. I'm very, very sorry, but... Okay. Okay, but then what about the audience?
Time, please, time.